I don't talk about what happened at Lake Kanatoa. Not to my wife, not to my therapist, not even to Marcus, who was there with me for most of it, and who, last I checked, still refuses to go anywhere near the Adirondacks. We don't really talk anymore, Marcus and I. Some experiences do that to people. They don't break friendships exactly. They just hollow them out until there's nothing left worth holding on to. But I've been sitting on this for 3 years now, and I know, that carrying it alone is doing something to me. Something slow and quiet and permanent. So I'm going to tell you what happened that weekend in September at the campsite near the northern edge of the Adirondack Park in upstate New York. I'm going to tell you all of it, even the parts that make me sound crazy. Because I am many things now, but I am not crazy. I need you to believe that going in. It was Marcus's idea. It's always Marcus's idea. We'd been planning the trip since July. 4 guys, long weekend, no cell service, no wives, no deadlines. Just the trees and the lake and however many cases of beer we could fit into the back of my Tacoma. The other 2, Derek and Phil, bailed last minute. Derek's kid got sick. Phil just didn't show up and didn't answer his phone, which was very Phil. So it ended up being just Marcus and me, which honestly felt fine at the time. Better, even. More peaceful. We drove up on a Friday afternoon, taking Route 9 north out of Albany, and then cutting west on smaller and smaller roads, until the GPS signal flickered and died somewhere around the town of Speculator. The trees got taller the further we went. The sky got narrower. By the time we pulled onto the dirt access road that led down to Lake Kanatoa, the sun was already sitting low and orange behind the ridgeline, and the shadows between the pines were long and dark and absolute. The campsite was exactly what you'd want it to be. Remote, quiet. A clearing about 40 yards from the water's edge, ringed by old-growth pine and spruce that smelled like cold sap and something earthy underneath, that deep forest smell that you only get this far from a highway. There was a stone fire ring, a rusted iron grate, and a wooden post with a faded sign that read, Site 14, Kanatoa North, Pack in, Pack out. Marcus was already unloading the truck before I'd even turned off the engine. "This is perfect," he said, and he grinned at me over the roof of the cab, and I smiled back, and I meant it. In that moment, with the last of the daylight warming the pine tops and the smell of the lake coming up soft and cold through the trees, it was perfect. I wish I could go back to that moment. I wish I could stay in it forever. We set up camp quickly, 2 tents side by side, a tarp strung between 2 trees in case of rain, firewood from the bundle we'd bought at the gas station in Speculator, because every experienced camper knows you don't burn wood from the forest floor, not up here, where the bark beetle has been moving through the trees for years, leaving rot and ruin behind it. We had our camp chairs and our headlamps and our cooler packed with steaks and eggs and far more beer than 2 men needed. The fire came up easy. The steaks were good. The beer was cold. We talked the way old friends talk when they finally have enough space and silence to really talk. About our jobs, our marriages, our fathers, all the small compromises we'd made over the years that had somehow added up to entire lives. It was good. It was real. It was the kind of conversation that a busy life doesn't leave room for. It was around 10 o'clock, maybe 10:30, when Marcus went to the lake to wash out his plate. He was gone for maybe 3 minutes. When he came back, he sat down in his camp chair and looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen on his face before. Not quite worried, not quite confused, something in between. "Hey," he said, "there's someone on the other side of the lake." I looked up from the fire. "Camper?" "Maybe." He paused. "They have a light, lantern or something, just standing there." I didn't think much of it then. The lake was maybe 200 yards across at that point, and the north shore had a few dispersed campsites spread along the edge. It wasn't unusual. "Probably just someone checking their fishing line," I said. Marcus nodded slowly. "Yeah, probably." But he kept glancing toward the lake. I noticed that. I noticed it, and I filed it away, and I didn't think about it again until later when I should have been sleeping, and wasn't. I woke up at 2:17 a.m. I know the exact time because I'd left my watch on, an old Casio my father gave me, with a face that glows green when you press the button. I pressed it in the dark of my tent, and it said 2:17, and I lay there for a moment wondering what had woken me. Nothing felt wrong immediately. That's the thing about being in the woods at night. The first few times, every sound wakes you up. Wind in the branches, a branch dropping, some animal moving through the undergrowth. Your body isn't used to the language of the forest at night, and so it treats every sound as potential danger until it learns the pattern. I lay there and listened to the pattern. Wind, the lake, a loon far off and mournful, branches settling, and then something that didn't fit. A sound I can only describe as footsteps, slow, deliberate, crunching through the dry pine needles at the edge of camp. Not the scattered, randomized movement of an animal. Too regular, too even. Left, right, left, right. I held my breath. They stopped. 10 seconds of total silence. Then they started again, moving along the perimeter of the camp, not coming closer, not retreating, just circling, maybe 30, 40 feet out in the trees, following the rough boundary of the clearing in a wide, slow arc. My first thought was bear. The Adirondacks have black bears, and they'll investigate a campsite at night, especially if they smell food. But bears don't move like that. They're not precise. They're not patient. I reached for my headlamp and then stopped. There's something you need to understand about being in the dark, in the woods, far from any road or town, with a sound you can't explain circling you in the blackness. The headlamp was right there, 6 inches from my hand. I could have clicked it on and swept it across the trees and probably found nothing, a deer, a raccoon, my own tired imagination. But I didn't, because some part of me, some old and animal part that lives below rational thought, understood that if I turned on that light, whatever was out there would know exactly where I was. So I lay there, still, breathing through my nose, watching the thin mesh wall of my tent and the absolute darkness beyond it. The footsteps completed one full circle of the camp. Then they stopped and didn't start again. I lay awake until the sky outside my tent went from black to charcoal gray, and only when I could hear birds, real birds, morning birds, the chickadees and white-throated sparrows that fill the Adirondack mornings with sound, only then did I allow myself to close my eyes. When I woke up 2 hours later, Marcus had already made coffee on the camp stove, and the morning was so bright and cold and ordinary that I almost didn't say anything. "Did you hear anything last night?" I asked. He handed me a mug, looked at me. "Like what?" "I don't know, movement around camp, maybe 2 in the morning. He was quiet for a moment. "I heard something," he said. "I figured it was a deer." "Yeah," I said, "me too." We drank our coffee and watched the mist lift off the lake, and neither of us said anything else about it. The second day was fine, almost aggressively normal. We fished from the bank in the morning, caught 2 smallmouth bass and threw them back, hiked the Northville Placid Trail for a few miles in the afternoon, far enough to reach a rocky overlook where we could see the whole valley stretched out below us, the lake, our campsite, the dark canopy of the forest stretching unbroken to every horizon. Beautiful, enormous, indifferent. There's something that the forest does to you when you've been in it long enough. It erodes the part of you that believes you matter, not in a cruel way, in an honest way. You stand up on that ridge and look out at all those miles of trees that were standing before your grandparents were born, and will be standing long after everything you've ever built has turned to dust, and something in your chest rearranges itself. Marcus took a photo. I stared at the lake. "You can see our camp from here," I said. "Yeah." "You can see the whole North Shore." He looked where I was looking. We were maybe 500 feet up, looking almost straight down at the lake. The North Shore was clearly visible, a thin strip of dark shoreline, a few pale patches that might have been sandy clearings, the dark geometry of trees. "There's no campsite over there," Marcus said. He said it quietly, like he'd already known. "What? The light last night? I looked it up on the trail map this morning." He pulled the folded paper map from his jacket pocket, we'd bought it at the ranger station, and pointed. "The North Shore is closed, has been for 2 seasons, erosion damage, no camping permitted." I looked at the North Shore. I looked at the map. Then who was over there? Marcus folded the map carefully. Poacher, maybe. Someone ignoring the signs. He paused. Or it was just the light playing off the water. "You said you saw someone standing there." I said I saw a light. He put the map back in his pocket. "Come on, let's head back before it gets dark." We made it back to camp with about 40 minutes of daylight to spare. I noticed as we came down the trail towards the clearing that the ground around the camp had been disturbed. The pine needles at the perimeter of the clearing were scattered and pushed around in a way that might have been the wind or might have been something moving through them. I didn't say anything about it. I should have, I know that now, but I didn't want to be the one who ruined the trip. I didn't want to be the one who turned a good weekend into a story we'd tell later with embarrassment. Remember when you got spooked at Lake Kanatawa? So I said nothing, and I started the fire, and we cooked our dinner, and the night came down around us the way night comes down in the Adirondacks. Not gradually, but all at once, like a curtain dropping. It was Marcus who saw it first again. We'd been sitting by the fire for maybe 2 hours, talking less than the night before. I think we were both tired. I think we were both still carrying the feeling from the ridge, that particular smallness that the wilderness gives you when you let it in. "There it is," Marcus said. I didn't have to ask what he meant. I just looked toward the lake. There was a light on the North Shore. Not a campfire. The wrong color for that. Too white, too steady, without any of the warm orange flicker you get from burning wood. Not a flashlight exactly either. It was softer than that, rounder, like a lantern, like an old oil lantern with a glass globe throwing out a pale circle of cold light. It was moving. Not fast, not frantically, slowly and deliberately, moving from left to right along the shore, maybe 60, 70 yards of visible movement before the trees swallowed it, and then a pause, and then it emerged again, moving right to left, back and forth, like someone pacing. "That is not a reflection," I said. "No," Marcus agreed, "it's not." We watched it for a long time. Neither of us spoke. The loons were calling across the water, that long, wavering cry that sounds like grief and always has, and the fire popped and settled beside us, and the light on the North Shore kept moving. Left, right, left, right. Then it stopped, faced us.
I say faced us because there's no other word for it. One moment it was moving laterally along the shore, and the next it was perfectly still and perfectly pointed at our campsite. Not toward the camp in general, toward us, toward the fire, toward the two chairs sitting in them with their faces lit orange from below. "Marcus," I said, "I see it. Should we—" "Don't," he said, and then quieter, "Don't move." So we sat there, very still, with the fire going between us and the lake, and the light on the far shore, and 200 yards of dark water in between. The light blinked out. Just like that. Not faded, not moved away. Gone, the way you'd pinch out a candle flame. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. "Okay," Marcus said carefully. "Okay, that was weird, but it could be, if you say reflection, I'm gonna lose my mind." He didn't say anything. We went to bed early that night, unspoken agreement. I checked that the food was properly hung. We had a bear bag on a line between two trees, regulation distance from camp, and I made sure the fire was fully cold before I zipped myself into my tent. I checked my watch before I closed my eyes. 10:48 p.m. I set no alarm because there was nothing to wake up for, and because some part of me already knew that something would do the waking. 2:17 the first night. 3:04 the second night. I know because I checked. The watch face glowed green in the dark of my tent. 3:04. And the sound that had woken me was not footsteps this time. It was someone standing at the edge of my tent, calling my name. Let me be precise, because I've turned this in my mind so many times that I need to be precise. It wasn't a voice, not the way I'm using my voice right now. It was more like an approximation of a voice, the right frequency, the right cadence, roughly the right sound, but without whatever it is that makes a voice warm. It was the shape of my name, without the substance of it. A recording played at the wrong speed, an echo of something that once was language. And it knew my name, my full name, not Jake, which is what everyone calls me, Jacob, the way my mother called me when I was a child and she was worried about me. Jacob. I pressed myself against the far wall of my tent. Jacob, come outside. There are things your body does when real fear arrives. Not movie fear, real fear. Your vision narrows, your hearing opens up, your skin goes cold from the inside out, like being hollowed and filled with ice water. Your thoughts don't race, they stop. There is only the present moment, only the immediate animal calculus of what threatens you and what protects you. The tent wall was between us. That was all. Nylon and mesh and a zipper. Marcus, I said. I tried to say it loudly, but it came out as barely a whisper. Marcus isn't awake, the voice said. Outside my tent, 2 feet away. He's not going to wake up, Jacob. Just you. Come outside and look at something I want to show you. I did not move. I want to be very clear about that. Every molecule of me understood at a level below thought that I was not going to unzip that tent. Not for anything. Not for any voice, any sound, any appeal to logic or curiosity or bravery. I pulled my knees to my chest and I wrapped both arms around them and I made myself as small as I could and I watched the tent wall and I did not move. Something touched the outside of the tent. A single finger dragged slowly down the nylon from top to bottom. Not trying to open it, not trying to tear it, just touching it. The way you drag a finger down a window to get someone's attention. That soft, deliberate scraping sound. Then silence. I sat there until 6 a.m. when the birds started. Then I unzipped my tent very slowly and looked outside. The camp was empty. The forest was bright and bird-filled and completely devastatingly ordinary. Marcus's tent was zipped. I walked over and put my hand on the nylon and said his name. He woke up confused, groggy, no idea what time it was. He hadn't heard a thing.
I want to talk about the pine needles. In the light of that morning, I walked the perimeter of the camp, not looking for anything specific, or maybe I was. Maybe I needed to find something that would let me file the whole experience under bad dream or sleep paralysis and move on. The ground told a different story. The pine needles at the edge of the clearing, the same ones that had been disturbed the day before, were pressed flat in a way that indicated something had stood there for a long time, not walking through, standing in one spot, long enough to compact the soft forest floor. The spot was directly outside my tent, and beside it, and this is where I need you to stay with me because I know how this sounds, beside the compacted area, there were 2 long furrows in the needles, side by side, going from the edge of the trees to my tent door and back, like something had been dragged, or like something had walked without lifting its feet. I stood there and stared at those furrows for a long time. Then I walked back to the camp stove and made coffee and told Marcus we were packing up and leaving. He didn't argue. He took one look at my face and started breaking down his tent. We were on the dirt access road within 40 minutes. We didn't talk until we hit pavement, and even then it was just Marcus saying, "You want me to drive?" and me saying, "Yeah," and handing over the keys. We were 20 miles south, back in cell service range, when my phone started buzzing with missed notifications, news alerts, a text from my wife, a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. I listened to the voicemail. Dead air, a long stretch of it, and then, at the very end, just before the automated voice told me to press 7 to delete, a sound, quiet, distant, like it was coming from very far away. My name, Jacob. And then the sound of the lake, that specific sound, the soft lapping of water against a rocky shore that I would know anywhere, that I will know for the rest of my life, that wakes me up some nights, even now, when the house is quiet and my wife is sleeping and the dark feels too deep. I deleted the message. I've never told my wife about it. The number, when I looked it up later, was not assigned to any carrier. It was not a real number. Numbers like that don't exist. I know. I checked. I've read a lot since then about the Adirondacks, about the history of that particular lake. The name Kanatoa is derived from a Mohawk word. There are a few possible translations. One of them is simply the lake. Another, less commonly cited, is where they come back to. I don't know what was on the north shore of Lake Kanatoa. I don't know what stood outside my tent and said my name in that wrong, hollow, almost human voice. I don't know who made the footsteps that circled our camp on both nights, or how anything could have known my name, my full name, or how a voicemail from a non-existent number could contain the sound of that specific lake. I don't know. If it was something that had always been there in those old northern woods, in those black water depths, waiting with the particular patience of something that understands that time means nothing to it, something that has watched people come to those trees with their fires and their tents and their beer and their comfortable certainty that the dark holds nothing that can reach them, or if it was something that followed us home. I don't know. What I know is this: I still sleep with the lamp on, 3 years later, I still press myself toward the center of the bed in the small hours, away from the window, away from the edge. I still cannot hear the sound of water against rock without my chest going cold and tight. I still check every night without fail that every door in my house is locked. And sometimes, on the nights when the neighborhood is very quiet and the trees in the yard are moving in the wind, I hear something I can't explain, a soft sound just outside the window, like a finger being dragged very slowly down the glass. I never look. You understand. I never look. There are things in the old woods that have been there far longer than we have, and some of them have learned to say our names. The question that keeps me awake at night, the one I never want answered, the one I suspect I already know the answer to, is not what it was. It's why it let me go. If this story reached into something cold inside your chest, if you're sitting a little closer to the light right now, then you already understand why I finally had to tell someone. Drop a comment below with just the word Kanatoa if this got under your skin. I read every single one, and I need to know I'm not the only one who feels it. If you know someone who loves camping, who heads up into the Adirondacks every season without a second thought, share this with them, not to scare them, just so they know. And if this is the kind of story that kept you with it from the first word to the last, hit that like button, because there are more nights I haven't talked about yet, more roads, more dark water, more voices that knew things they shouldn't. I'll tell you when I'm ready. Until then, don't go north.